Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. The world is full of temptations. Some are small and relatively harmless, others life-changing. Jesus, in his humanness, faced temptation and difficult choices. Like his ancestor David, Jesus could have chosen wealth and power. Instead, he chose the path of servanthood. May God give us the courage to serve, to follow the path of Jesus. We extinguish the first candle, a reminder of the many times our choices have moved us away from God. Every time we give in to temptation, we diminish the light of God in our world. God of grace and forgiveness, strengthen us as we face life's temptations. Help us to consider the cost of our choices. When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. You will all fall away, Jesus told them, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter declared, even if all fall away, I will not. Truly, I tell you, Jesus answered, today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the others said the same. It is difficult to face our fears. Even as the disciples left everything to follow Jesus, when they were challenged to profess their faith in him, they turned away. They were afraid of what might happen to them. May God call us to be bold in the face of fear. We extinguish the candle of fear, remembering that despite how he must have felt, Jesus didn't run away from the danger and suffering. God of strength and courage, help us to accept the risk of serving you. Just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, Rabbi, and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. Then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Am I leading a rebellion, said Jesus, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me, but the scriptures must be fulfilled. Then everyone deserted him and fled. Imagine the despair that Jesus must have felt as his followers abandoned him. Who remained at his side during his trial and sentencing. There are times when the only thing we can rely on is God. When all that we have is God. In our hearts, we know that God will never leave us alone. We extinguish a candle recalling the abandonment of Jesus in the hour of his greatest need, and the strength it must have taken for Jesus to face such persecution alone. God of love and comfort, Be with us in those times when we have nothing to hold on to except for you. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I do not know or understand what you are talking about." And he went out into the forecourt. Then the cock crowed. And the servant girl, on seeing him, began again to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. Then after a little while the bystanders again said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know this man you are talking about." At that moment the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. How often do we choose the path of self-protection when God calls us to a riskier place? Our hearts often speak better truth than our heads. Like Peter, we know that when the truth of denial comes to rest on our hearts, we are filled with anguish. We extinguish this candle, recognizing the times of despair in our lives. God of grace and mercy, even when we stray, you are there. Surround us with love and forgiveness as we take the next step. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You have said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of." But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. There are questions in life for which we have no answer. In those times, we are called to have faith. Pilate, realizing he was about to do the unthinkable, looked to justify his actions to clear his conscience. We are caught in our humanness. There are times when we do things we know that we shouldn't do. We extinguish this candle for the times of confusion. Grant us understanding, God, even as we follow your Son to the cross. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. We cannot imagine the grief that the followers of Jesus must have felt on that awful day. Unspeakable grief to the cross, to suffering, to death. We recall our own times of grief as we remember Mary, Peter, James, John, and the others. We extinguish this candle for the grief of generations of followers of Jesus. We lift our grief to you, O God, and ask for your compassion. Be present with us in the face of Jesus' death. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he is calling for Elijah." And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was God's Son." There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. These used to follow Jesus and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. Today is the darkest day in the Christian calendar. Today we remember all of the horrific actions that threatened God's light. Like the disciples, we face our broken promises, disobedience, lack of trust, fear, and wavering commitment. Today we experience the darkness of Christ's death and the separation between God and humanity portrayed in that death. We extinguish the Christ candle. It is finished.